this time. I'm back, and it's sooner. Um, I am, as I mentioned before, going to give a little bit of a life update, and then share a couple of poems, really short poems that I wrote probably about in my mid 20s. Reading through some of this stuff, it seems like that's about the time period based on just some of the stuff that I mentioned. But um, life update. So Uh, I'm about at the halfway point with my master's in arts of teaching for special education with students with learning and behavioral disabilities or disorders. Um, I'm actually considering options for a dual certification because my undergraduate degree is in psychology. I have enough psychology credit. I'm pretty sure that if I took the praxis, I could also certify specifically to teach high school psychology. My school doesn't certify in psychology, so I would need to talk to um, somebody there about talking to the board. But I'm also looking at the option of seeing how many history classes I would need to take to be able to dual certify in history because um, most of my electives in my undergrad program were history classes, so I can't be that far off from that. That's just some of the stuff that's in the works as far as what's going on with school right now. As far as work, which is also school, but the high school that I teach at, my seniors all graduated. I got to see a lot of my seniors that graduated in December at the first semester who came for the ceremony, and that was really awesome. I got to actually see one of them at prom too. It was really cool to get to see everybody and kind of celebrate this milestone for them and um, be kind of in awe at the end of my first year teaching. Um, I'm going to have my previous juniors as seniors next year, and then I'm going to have a new group of juniors coming in August, who are a pretty good group from what I hear from their resource English teacher of the previous 2 years. Um, Life's been a little bit light on the social life. There are attempts to make friends or socialize or do things, but I've got a lot on my plate. Now that high school's out for the summer, I'm doing a lot of Ubering to try to put back money um, to be able to pay things down and be ready for this next year. I am obviously I'm taking classes over the summer, so that part isn't as slowed down. Right now, I'm working on learning and development through the lifespan, and our book is educational psychology. Part of it is a little bit of a refresher because that was part of my psychology program, but it's a little bit more in depth and it's culminating in a little bit of a research paper or presentation. So it's still going to be some pretty decent work. So right now for summertime, I'm kind of just juggling driving and doing deliveries with that, and hanging out with Leah, hanging out with the couple of friends I've managed to make here in the last year. Uh, it's really difficult, I think, to have a life. A being new and trying to like find my place as somebody who typically doesn't ever really feel like they're they have a place or that they fit anywhere. But B with having as much on my plate. We have a roller derby team here, and Leah and I went skating last weekend, and some of the people there, I guess, like are part of the team, and one of them mentioned to her that they have a boot camp coming up, and um, I told Leah like I learned my lesson with my undergraduate degree until I'm finished, at least with the extent of school that I'm doing. I don't have the extra time on my hands for that. Definitely still making sure to do some outdoor skating, wearing sunscreen more because oh, my freckles on my face are running together, and my face is just gonna be this solid orangey color in places. I mean, it's obvious that they're freckles, but uh, I'm back on meds for my colitis. I'm taking budesonide instead of what I was taking before. Not so much of a kidney killer, an appetite suppressant, and doesn't have the same warnings about being intolerant to the sun, but I think it definitely has made me more sensitive to the sun. So, woo. Um, that's kind of it. I increased my Adderall dosage a little while back. And that's been really helpful. Just getting back on it in general with teaching and having to be in charge of kids whose brains work very similar to mine does, and who also are not quite at that level of maturity of knowing that there's a time and a place. Is It's been an interesting ride, and I'm excited to be starting this next year fully medicated off the bat. Um, I do want to also, I'll be back again soon to share another thing that I'm working on. Um, During my actual like undergraduate psychology degree in my um, lifespan classes, I think it was adult aging and geriatrics, so psychology in those ranges. One of the things that was a big focus was the importance of end of life planning, even if you don't think that you're old enough that that's something that is important. I am not sure if I've really touched on this as much on my channel, but there was a while when I was looking into maybe going into palliative care or doing end of life planning or being a death doula, even. And ultimately, I decided that wasn't for me. But I do plan to uh, do things to be prepared. It's obviously like important in the world that we live in to have directives for your family to know what you want to happen after you die, for your family to know whether or not you want to be on life support for any given amount of time. Because if you don't make those things known or you don't have legal documents for what the plan is, then um, you don't know what's going to happen and your wishes might not be honored. Um, And I've had a preoccupation with death for much of my life. My ex-husband very much used to tell me I was morbid or odd because I would talk about certain things after death or having certain plans for after death when I was building my funeral playlist. And I know I'm not the only person with funeral playlist, and that is because of talking about lived experiences and encountering other people who are like, "Hey, me too." So talk about your fucking life and shit. Um, but one of the other things that, like in this adult aging and geriatrics class, I can't remember if that was what it's called. I'm pretty sure it was some combination of those words, but uh, it can be very it can be a very good activity to write your own obituary or write your own epitaph. And I kind of hadn't really thought about this in a while. It was something that I was working on. I had started writing my obituary at one point. I don't think I really made it very far, but I was listening to an episode of Morbid Podcast and realized that um, I think it was a listener tales episode, or no, it was actually obituary. I just started listening to that one. And some of the obituaries that have been read were like people who wrote their own. And so it kind of like got me back onto that. Oh, I was doing this at one point and I never finished it. So I'm gonna kind of post another update soon, a little bit about that and that like kind of preoccupation with death and that morbidness, but it's also in that same vein going to touch on like childhood oddities and my personal morbid. Um, One of those things with the childhood oddities is something that I only recently shared with somebody for the first time, and it's one of those things where when I start to doubt myself and knowing that I have autism and like, oh, maybe it's just I think that, or I'm like getting on the fat or this or that or whatever. This is one of those things from my childhood that I think about and I'm like, nope, if I ever would have shared that with anybody. Anybody with any sort of psychology background would have been like pinpointed like that kid is autistic. Um, at that point, though, I was really good at masking because I had definitely realized how unusual I was, and um, was already aware that not fitting in was not the best feeling in the world. So that is for the next time. I'm going to read a couple of these poems from my mid 20s era. Uh, they're, yeah, I don't know, they're untitled as per usual. Maybe one day I'll go through. I want to publish my poetry someday. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And probably going to end up putting titles on a lot of them. Probably. But this is the first one. I dream of darkness, of nothing. My sleep is empty. Better than the horror of night terrors, waking up trembling, gasping for breath, sweating, panicked. I'll take the void over the violence of my adolescence. Sometimes I remember pictures, fleeting feelings, a vague sense that my sleep brought dreams. Confusion, better than fear, better than violence, better than the shitty attempt to gather my thoughts, better than dreaming of her again. And that is a reference to a very important friendship in my life that ended very badly. I dreamed about her for a really long time after that, and it was frustrating because I didn't want to dream about her, but that's the way that it was. Poem number 2. These are short and sweet, y'all. Candlelight flickering across the room, beautiful, mesmerizing, even hypnotizing. Step in the fire, feel it consume everything. Stop yourself from realizing all that is unknown, the uncertainty, it'll tear you apart. What does it matter where you go when it's over, as long as you go forward? Stand tall, stay strong, and know that in the end, we are all figuring out the same shit. In the end, it'll feel good to know you felt good. Um, that was from a very mixed up point in my life. Pretty positive on that one. But I hope that y'all enjoyed the update. Like I said, I'll be back soon. I want to talk a little bit about some of my childhood oddities and my own morbidity. Some further exploration on this channel. And I might have some more poetry to share with y'all. Maybe. But y'all have a great day. I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.